Hi, everybody. So my name is Jennifer Coronado. I am a senior producer in business development and art at Industrial Light and Magic, which is the visual effects company you might know from some Star Wars-y kind of stuff. I'm really excited today to have our panel to talk about seeing sound, the future of live experiences. So I'd like to introduce our panelists today. First up, we have Lizzie Pocock coming up to us from Treatment Studio, where she's a producer. I have Svana Gisla, also producer of ABBA Voyage. You may have heard of that. And then I have, last but not least, Ben Morris, who's a creative director and senior visual effects supervisor for Industrial Light and Magic. So what questions you got? Just kidding. Okay, so before we get into the larger conversation about music and live event spaces and what it will evolve into in the future, I want to take a minute to explore how each of you became involved in this space. This space being the live events and music space. And I think maybe Lizzie, we'll start with you.
Yeah, of course. So I... Actually, my background's in corporate live events, and it was in 2012 when I got asked to go and work on the London Olympic ceremonies, when I first sort of fell into doing video for live experiences, and also very closely tied to music. And I got the bug and stayed with it ever since.
Yeah. And what about you, Svana? How did you get involved in music?
Into live music?
Yeah, live music.
I produced a bunch of filming of big concerts and stuff. I went on tour with Beyonce and Jay-Z for On the Run, and did a lot of Rammstein and did a lot of concerts. And then ABBA called and said, we've got this thing that we may want to do, that then turned into a concert. And I've been doing that since 2017. So I sort of just scrambled into it somehow.
Yeah. Ben, I wanted to talk a little bit about your Muppets Christmas Carol past. But... You're an Academy Award-winning visual effects supervisor. You've worked on several films, including Gladiator, Golden Compass, and the Star Wars films. How did you get involved in the live events and music space?
It was a complete fluke, and thanks to this lady over here, I was sitting... I'll tell the story, just a small one. I was in a really horrible rainstorm at the local train station in a horrible little place called Didcot in England, and I was waiting for the train to London to go in, and I got this strange phone call from somebody who said, hi, my name's Svana. This was in, I can't even remember how long, it was 2018? Yeah, something like that. My name's Svana. I'm working with a certain pop group from the 70s, and I saw your picture in the National Gallery, a portrait of me wearing lots of white dots on my face. I think we need to talk. And I didn't know what was going on. You wouldn't tell me who it was. Put the phone down. I phoned my wife and said, there's a crazy person on the phone. And then got into work, finally made the phone call. And I have to say, I'd never worked in this industry. This sector of the creative industry has been filmed for my whole career. But within a week, we were on a plane to Stockholm, meeting ABBA, who I will say straight up are the most wonderful people in the world. They are the most gorgeous human beings and clients that I've ever had the pleasure of working with. And,
except for all the directors we've worked with.
No,
they are
okay,
just as good.
They're all amazing too. But anyway, so it's down to Svana. That's how I got here.
That's great. So it comes to the question of how does visual storytelling integrate into the concert experience? And how do you define visual storytelling and how it works when it comes to concerts? Maybe, Svana, we start with you, because ABBA Voyage was a whole new area.
Yeah, I guess we never really saw it as storytelling. The narrative is very short, and it's all about emotion for us. I mean, we're just trying to take the audience on an emotional journey and kind of pulling those strings, bringing them up or down. But I think the story was very simple. ABBA back on stage after 40 years in 2022, which is the year we opened. So it's like a little Black Mirror kind of thing to it, I guess, where they're as they were in 1979, but they're in 2022 with new music they wrote in 2022. So I guess that's as far as it went in terms of storytelling. but it's quite a nice emotional launch pad for the first song, where they rise up on stage and sort of they haven't been there for 40 years. So, and then from then on, you get to take them on that journey with the help of some very clever people. It wasn't just me.
Well, and Ben, you come from a narrative storytelling background, working on films. So for you, suddenly you're in this space where it's directly emotional, right? So how did you have to wrap your head around that?
Well, for me, I've always loved music, and I played the bass. My brother was a drummer, and all those sort of things. So working in music was amazing. When we work on films, we often work with pictures all day. I mean, literally, when we're making a film and certain shots, I'll watch the shot 300-400 times. You'll watch it every day of the week, probably 2 or 3 times a day. But you don't often have the final mix and the audio there. With this, it was just so wonderful to have such brilliant music playing all day, every day. And it just, and actually, we never got bored of it. So in terms of how we prepared for it, we didn't know. It was a complete unknown. But the one fun thing about ILM and the company and the history is we try things that you just don't know how you're going to do it. You just say yes, and then we'll work it out
Well,
later.
I remember you asking me for storyboards in the beginning.
I know. I had to...
What are you talking about?
No, and I remember talking to Bailey, the director, and I sort of said, so you're going to direct them? And Bailey said to me, Ben, they're pop stars. I'm not going to direct them. They know what to do. They are incredible people. And I'm so used to a director sitting and working with actors and going through it and maybe rehearsing and all that stuff. So there were a few changes in the landscape that
different language that you're speaking. And Lizzie, I'm sure you've experienced. We've worked with you on some of the Sphere stuff.
We did, yeah. And I think it's really interesting because I think ultimately it does come down to emotion. And like for a lot of the audience people that are coming to these music shows, it's it's like the night that they've been looking forward to for however long that they've been saving up for it, and they'll have very specific emotions and connections with some of the songs in that set. So, different artists that we've worked with approach it in a different way. And it's always very personal to that artist and how they connect with their audience.
Right. So there's this whole buzz phrase, which is experiential entertainment, right? So I wonder if maybe, Lizzie, you could talk about, what does experiential entertainment mean to you, or is it just a buzz phrase? What do you think about that?
I hate the buzzwords. Immersive is another one that's such a buzzword. And I think the sort of advances in technology that we've seen recently have... I think they just, to that earlier point, I think they just allow you to do much more storytelling with the visuals and the screens and the theatre around a show. So experimental, I guess we're, to Ben's point, we're experimenting every time we put on a show. We sort of never start those conversations with knowing exactly what we're going to do or how we're going to do it. We start with the music and with the artist. And then we sort of go from there and say, what's the challenge this time? What do we want to make people feel in the room?
Right. Ben, what do you think about experiential entertainment? What does that spark for you?
For me, having worked in films, and it's slightly different in America. In England, we're all a bit prim and we don't sort of whoop and cheer. But in American cinemas, that happens, and that's totally cool. But for me, going to a concert, you lose it. You just go bonkers, and you're totally excited. You're just getting into it, and so for that experience is a shared human experience. When you sit in a dark cinema, you're there, and there's maybe 1,000 other people, but you are not losing your mind with them and looking around. And I think that, to me, is a very powerful experience. And I think riffing off what you're riffing off earlier about music, people come with their memories associated with music that they're going to see, and we can enhance that with the visuals and create new memories. I mean, you play a song and you'll go back to a time in history, whether it's 6 months ago or 50 years ago. But I think the storytelling here is, in the instances of the shows we've worked together on, let's create a new experience that will become a platform for everybody, but it has to be shared. And much as I'm amazed by the advances in goggles and technology and the like, I do love sitting in a room with people and actually being able to look around and see if people are enjoying it and smiling. And that totally happens in these new big concerts.
Yeah. Svana, is that how you feel about it as well?
Yeah, totally. I mean, we ban filming and photography in the ABBA arena because we want people to be present. Like you say, things do happen if you don't post them instantly on Instagram or TikTok. You know, they still happen. And how often do you really look at those recordings when you get home? My guess is not very often. So why not just be in the moment and have that shared experience? And when you ask people to put their phones away, they're sort of liberated in a way, and they start looking at the people around them, and that enhances the experience and the emotion multiple times, because they've forgotten what it feels like to be in a room with 3,000 people and not have phones in front of your face the whole time. And that, I think, creates a really powerful energy in the space, in the performance space. And I think that's where new memories get made and new emotions are felt, and it enhances the whole thing.
It's interesting saying that, because I hear emotion, I hear memories coming through as a through line. And there are studies that people like with Alzheimer's, like music is what the one thing they can remember, right? Those songs that connect to you. So how do you, when we're talking about technology and how it fits into things, how do you take something that's technically innovative but make sure that it's not over technical experience that takes away from the performance of what is the core, which is the band that you're working with? How do you do that?
Well, you hide it. We worked really, really hard to hide the technology. If you walk out of a concert like ABBA Voyage and you feel like you've seen a technological wonder or a spectacle, we would have completely failed. You need to hide it. And I think where everything's available to you in technology, it's about restraint. It's about using it as sparsely as you can and just letting music do the talking. I mean, I can listen to a piece of music sometimes in complete black darkness and feel more than I would if you were shooting stars at me. So it's all about just tuning down to the minimum that you need. And then obviously sometimes you crank it up to 11 and let it rain. But other times it's always about pulling back. And technology, just because it's available doesn't mean we have to use it. We don't have to throw the kitchen sink at it the whole time.
It's true. Ben, how do you, as someone who, because you walked into the ABBA Voyage space, working on films, and suddenly, now you have to create a concert experience. So how did you think about making sure the technical didn't overwhelm the musical?
It's very hard to overwhelm ABBA music in people's minds. I think it had to complement it, and I think we did huge amounts of new R&D and working out how to... The key thing was, everybody who turned up at an experience where the band aren't there, they're sort of buying into it, but you actually have to give them the perception or the perceptual feeling that the band are there and just let them get over it. And we kind of knew if we hadn't got over that in the first song or two, we'd be in really deep trouble. And I have to admit, I was terrified. We didn't know what was going on. I'd sat in the arena. It was only finished about 6 or 8 weeks before the show opened. And I just remember sitting there with Svana and Ludwig and all of the other guys, and it was completely empty, going, is this going to work? Is this going to happen? And the really funny thing was, it was the sort of old roadies and the old lighting teams and people who go on tour, and Lizzie, you know all of these people, they just went, people are going to love it. You get 3,000 people in here. It's their favourite songs. They're just going to buy it. And so for me, the technology, yes, we spent ages building those pictures, but the pictures had to say the right thing and fill the space. The pictures had to complement the music. And like I say, in films, we'll spend months working on a shot. Here, we were spending years working on a song. As soon as you added the music, it just makes the pictures look better. Or you can turn it the other way around, and it makes the music sound better. And we always feel that when we see the final dub of a film. It suddenly makes all of our visual effects look even better.
Yeah.
So, but it's not about sort of going OTT with gimmicks.
Yeah, we I manage an art department, and we frequently tell some of the newer artists, watch a film with the sound off, and then listen to the sound without looking at the film, so that you can see how the different pieces are constructed and how a story and a narrative comes together. Not to hammer on about technology, but in an article in Rolling Stone magazine last year, Kisia Akawi said, with technology changing the game and audiences craving unique experiences, the future of live music is all about connection, creativity, and pushing boundaries. When you folks are working with various artists that you're working with, what do you define as boundary pushing? What do you find as creative pushing? And how do you feel about connection? Lizzie, maybe we start with you.
Well, it's a tough question. It's interesting, and talking to the tech point as well, is all of the conversations that we start with always start with the creative intent as to what you want that show to look like. What do you want? How do you want to make it feel? We never sit there and go, "Oh, there's that piece of technology out there. Let's try and fit this show to that." Which was interesting with the Sphere, because that was a complete opposite of that. Suddenly, we were presented with this venue that was huge, and it was built, and it was a very specific shape. And so we really went back to the drawing board on that to look at, how do we use that space to tell the stories that we want to tell? U2, who was the first artist in there, they're storytellers at the end of the day. Like, their music tells stories and their visuals tell stories as well. Sometimes it's not dead obvious to people in the audience as to what that story is, but there's always a story there, and there's always a through line. So I think that's really what drives it at the end of the day, and how you build those connections with the audience in those storytelling moments.
Yeah. What about for you, Svana? Connections, creativity, boundaries.
I mean, if I think about what my lane is on that road of using technology in live performances, it is that sort of, what I'm really personally interested in is building that kind of time machine, and being able to go back in time and see people on stage. Because if you think about music as an art form, you can go and look at a beautiful painting in a beautiful gallery and enjoy it any time, any day, any year. You can go and see a piece of theatre, a Shakespeare or whatever. You can have a classical music, all literature. It really does, it stands the test of time. There's something about music that needs it to be performed from the sender. So not a cover band, not a version of, but for that sender that wrote that piece of music. Music exists through performance. Yes, you can listen to it on the radio or on a record player, but that's just 50% of it. If you want to experience a piece of music 100%, you've got to have the sender of it give it to you, right? So to be able to do what we did with ABBA, of putting them back on stage, and to be able to maybe do that too. I mean, there are generations now who don't know, who anybody is. They don't know what Beatles are. They don't know. And if you think about it, another 50 years ahead of time, there's going to be a plethora of unbelievable music just forgotten. It just disappears. It's not going to last, because you can't experience it being performed live. And I think that's why this technology is so exciting to me. We can give future generations and today's generation a chance to see Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young at Woodstock. We can allow them to travel back in time and have that feeling. And that's why it was so glorious to work with ILM, to actually make those 4 people real again on stage, to give that music its journey from the sender to the receiver.
Right, and when you love a piece of music or you love a band, you as an audience member too want to share that, and you want people to accept that. And you're right, if they haven't had the experience of seeing something, they aren't always as accepting of it until they feel that feeling.
It's sorry to interrupt. It's very interesting, because we spend a lot of our time, differently to ABBA, is rehearsing these shows without the band on stage, and it's amazing. Like, it still gives me goosepimples that first night when the audience comes in, that brings that little special magic, and then the band come on stage, and it's trying to recreate it. Yeah, it's just amazing. Yeah, and the tech can never, I don't think, will ever take away from that.
No. So go ahead.
So, no. It was very funny, because when we were getting ready for ABBA and commissioning it, again, the old rock and roll guys and girls sort of went, God, this is just fantastic. It's the easiest ever rehearsal period we've been to. You just press play, and they do the same thing every time.
Ben.
They never turn up late.
They're there every night, Ben.
Absolutely amazing.
Someone put a muzzle on Ben.
Oh, sorry. It was really cool. But we'd spent 2 years building it. So anyway.
So I want to, on this note, I just want to get in a little bit into like the aha moments, because in every performance, every concert, there's like one moment where you're like, oh man, the band is hitting it, the way everything looks is perfect. Like, what have you had an aha moment that you saw when you've seen a concert that you've produced?
Are you looking at me?
I'm looking at you.
Oh, all the time. I mean, the whole thing is an aha moment for me. I mean, listen, when we did the On the Run with Beyonce and Jay-Z, I'm in constant goosebump and awe, like how somebody goes on, like, just, it's magic. I'll never get tired of it. It's a feeling like no other when you see an incredible artist take an audience into the palm of their hand and just move it around. It's incredible. And I don't think what we did with ABBA will ever replace that, ever. It shouldn't. It won't. Those two things can exist together. And I think with the music industry today being so difficult because music is essentially free on the internet. You can't monetize music anymore. It's gone. The only thing you can do as a revenue stream for an artist is that kind
the
of
live experience.
It's that transaction that you have in a live experience, and it's so important to keep it alive and not let that fall between the cracks of all these big spectacles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What about you, Lizzie? Aha moment for you. Have you ever?
I mean, many.
Yeah.
And I think, so often we have, anywhere between sort of 3 months to a year to work on a show, and we're working on that in, relative isolation. But it's what I love about what I do is it's that there's sort of phases of the rehearsal period up until the final show, and, you sort of get on site and you see your stuff on screen for the first time and you go, thank God, especially with screens like the Sphere, because, we're working on monitors in offices ultimately, so everything you look at, you're like, is this going to be okay? We put VR goggles on and go, yeah, this feels kind of cool, and then you put it on the Sphere and you go, okay, this is great. But then you start layering in the other levels, as the staging, the production design, the lighting, the sound, and suddenly you start to sort of see this thing that you've been working on turn into something completely different because it's suddenly become much greater than its individual parts. And there's always moments. There's always things that I'm nervous about in production. I'm like, is this going to work? Is this going to look okay? How is it, we play a lot with IMAG, so live camera of the band on the screen, and how that integrates with visuals. And that's something that is almost impossible to sort of preempt and pre-plan. But, there's been some pieces in the past where you just have these really magic moments. There's one that I love I think it was Innocence and Experience with U2, and they had a massive stage that sort of spread across the entire arena, and we film Bono and his images on screen, and has his hand out like this, and his hand sits where the edge is standing on the screen within it, and so you get this amazing interplay of just magical moments that you kind of never think could be in, and then you're seeing it.
Who doesn't want to hold the edge in their hand?
I know,
right?
I would. Yeah, right?
So Ben, what about you? Aha moments
I can only speak to the ABBA concert. There were lots. I mean, and going back to the tech of it all, and I sometimes get a bit techie. We spent ages trying to make sure that the barrier that was it's a screen. I'm going to give it away. There is a screen involved here, but we never wanted people to feel or experience or see that. And so we spent huge amounts of time making sure that when we were working, the entire space, the virtual space and the real space, was all being considered at the same time. Same thing, we had VR. But we were also doing things like calibrating the lighting instruments. So every single lighting instrument that is in the real arena, we'd actually built down to finger smudge marks on the plastic moldings. But not just that. We looked at how the optics of the lights work, how the haze and the mist actually works. And you could write a PhD on haze in rock and roll concerts. It changes color depending what angle you look at the beam of light, how the shutters and gobos internals are working. So we had to go through all of that. And all of this, just to say, the aha moment was when we had people literally just saying, hang on, who's left a light on over there? And it was the stage guys. And it was like, no, that's one of our lights. No, what? No. And so we'd broken that barrier. We'd made that go invisible. And for me, that was a huge aha moment, because then the audience can walk in and just be with it and let it happen. And for me, the big aha moment was seeing a woman just sobbing and standing up, cheering, waving, screaming. And I just thought, you're having fun. That's my aha moment.
Yeah,
it's just
that's
brilliant.
honestly,
and all the
that's great.
technology was just irrelevant at that point. They were happy. That was the key.
Yeah, I saw ABBA Voyage, which is outside of London, last fall. And I went in and I was talking to one of the people who worked there, and there was one woman who had seen it 38 times.
Oh, 185 times is the record.
Really?
Yeah. They don't even
Was that
live
you,
in
Svana?
London. Well, I'm definitely triple figures, but no. People come every other week.
And going back to the experiential side, the thing about that I found fascinating about ABBA Voyage is the whole thing, from the bar all the way into the concert venue, which it was built for this specific, fed into a vibe, which was really a very cool experience.
Yeah, we just decided the minute you step off the train platform, which is opposite the arena, you become ours. And so the experience is about the hour and a half or hour before the show, and then after the show. So and I think Adele did that really, really well in Munich as well. She did a similar thing where going to a concert isn't just the 90 minutes in a space that somebody was there last night and somebody will be there tomorrow. It becomes an experience in and around the entire time you're there. And I think people are doing that more and more today. That, people spend a lot of money and a lot of effort and sometimes get on a plane and travel to come to see a concert. Why not make it even more special for them? Because it pays off, and it's another way of just, encouraging people to come back, and also just being generous to your audience when you can be. You should be.
Yeah, totally. We keep talking about, we're thinking about what's the future of music, what's the future of live events, but innovation in the concert space can be framed in many ways. For example, the Beatles did the first stadium tour. Lollapalooza in '91 was originally a farewell tour for Jane's Addiction, but ended up setting the template for what a music festival would be. Are there types of evolutions that you keep in mind now when you're designing a concert experience? Maybe, Svana, we start with you again.
No, not really. Like Lizzie said, we never chase technology. I mean, I would rather that technology follows us and gets invented as we go along than to look for the next thing.
Yeah, I'm thinking more along the lines of the audience, not necessarily the tech, but the audience experience. What about you,
I think
Lizzie?
it's interesting because every show that we've been speaking about, there is a static show, as in it's in one location, and the audience come to it, which is very different from how concert drawings worked traditionally, where the band, the artist will travel around, America, the world, Europe, and people have a shorter distance. So I think for me, that's one of the things that I've noticed sort of in recent times that's changing, is that there's sort of people come to us, which I think then leads into the sort of making it more of an experience for people. Like, people have travels, flights, train tickets, all the rest of it, accommodation. So make it more and make it worth their while coming.
Have you guys seen any shifts in the audiences in the last 10 years? Like how they intake things? Or has it, what do you think, Ben?
Well, back to Svana's telephone thing. I can't even remember the band's name, but my kids went to see a concert in the O2 in London. And within seconds, in fact, even before the band came on, they were sending me pictures. And everybody was consuming. They had a physical event in a vast arena, and they were consuming it through their phones. And I'm caught because I love putting a phone down and just walking away. But I think that my kids, they love their phones, and we've got to try and work out how the phone can still be part of a shared experience, that they can telegraph it. I mean, how many times have you been to a gig where you sit there and you're videoing and you can't get the other people's phones out of the way? You get home, you look at the videos, and you kind of keep them for a day, and then it's like, I need some more space, I'm just going to delete those. That's not a memory. It's trying to work out how the audience, if they're going to carry phones, and you can't always control that, how those sort of things will amplify their experience. And I would say, trying to describe, and I just stuck that one up, that's from Dead & Co, isn't it?
Yeah.
Trying to describe what it's like standing in the sphere. A telephone doesn't do it justice.
No phone will ever.
You just have to turn up and say, I mean, the closest thing I came to was saying it's like standing in the Colosseum or in a huge Olympic stadium and just saying it's just epic. But until you've got all the graphics on the walls and everything, it's very, very hard to communicate that. And people want to walk away and be able to tell others how that felt. So...
Yeah, I think there's an amazing thing with the sphere specifically as well, is it that you don't really think about when you first start looking at it, but that screen is a light. So what you put on that screen lights up the audience. And sort of going back to that kind of immersive thing, I think it's actually, in a weird way, it does immersion really well because it makes the audience feel part of what you're seeing on screen. There's one that I love, which is Beautiful Day, which was the sort of animals that we did for U2. And it went from sort of being sepia into colour, and the audience sort of almost blended in with the animals on screen. And the whole piece was about, ecology and endangered species in Nevada.
I can't reverse. I'm so sorry.
So beautiful.
Forward, never back.
Yeah. Yeah, but, you can see, like, the light, it lights up the audience, and I think that's,
Yeah.
it's exciting.
So, what do you guys think about tailored fan experiences? We've talked about that a little bit. And when I think about that, I think there's the Taylor Swift, where she had her movie, and she had her concerts, and it gave fans opportunities to participate in both spaces. What do you guys think about tailored fan experiences, and what do those actually mean now? Keeping in mind the phones, immersion, new oral capabilities that have been developed for concerts. What do you think about tailored experiences?
We're looking at some of the biggest spaces in the world, these arenas. For me, a tailored experience is feeling very intimate, potentially, with a performer. And there are ways in which we can bring that to individuals. It becomes a bit sort of concert in your bedroom, but it could be a really, really interesting thing to do. And people have often said, can you put me up on stage with my favourite band? And the answer is, yeah, you probably can experience that. There are going to be things and barriers, whether you have to put on a headset and how you'll really feel. But as soon as you do that and you bring intimacy in a 15,000 seat arena or a 100,000 seat arena, you want it to feel intimate, but it isn't. They're conducting tens of thousands of people, those incredible performers. If you try and make a tailored experience, and maybe I'm going down the scale might collapse, and you suddenly need interactivity. Because just being able to watch somebody perform in front of you and sort of walk around them and see. If you're a guitarist, yeah, you might freak out on looking at how they're playing the guitar. But actually, you want that photoreal vision of a person or a performer to acknowledge that you're there. And if they don't, they're just glassy-eyed and in their own world looking around. We haven't broken that yet. I mean, to me, that's where tailored experiences will step up. But for me, I also don't want to be wearing a headset. I want to have some other way of experiencing that. And I think a lot of people are coming to us now saying, can you do this in a smaller venue? And you'd think it's easier. The surface is smaller, the staging is smaller. It's way scarier and way harder to make it actually work and actually have an audience walk out as satisfied. So I think the tailored experience is really interesting. And also being able to telestream around the world. So that Taylor Swift might be performing in Philadelphia, but you're in Tokyo, and you actually want to feel like you're at that same concert. Those are all things that are bubbling up now, and how you can give an audience a satisfying sense of being there without just whacking it on a big flat screen.
Yeah, it's interesting because it becomes about the feeling again, right? And how the experience makes you feel as an audience member. And I think sometimes what people miss in a solo journey is that there's a community feeling that really feeds part of how you enjoy a music experience, right? So I know, Svana, you mentioned this a little bit earlier, but we talked about the solo screens.
Yeah.
And how that can be a challenge. But some of the things that concert goers are experiences that concert attendees have to, 60% of concert attendees have skipped some events in order to balance out costs, because concerts are very expensive these days. What do you see as the most important thing for the future of concert attendance in order to keep the live experience a peak experience?
In terms of cost?
All in. Like, how do you have a peak experience that people want to go to, and that's the one that they can go to?
I don't know. It is tough because it feels like people are gravitating towards the spectacle at the moment. Spaces like the Sphere and stuff, and they're building more of them. So spectacle is going to win over the artist. And it is a bit of an unfair thing because not everybody can walk into the Sphere and plug their amps in and play a concert. I mean, I don't know how much it costs to put images on that surface, but I could probably tell you it's a lot, and probably out of most people's reach as an artist. And I mean, coming from, having spent 25 years working with artists and helping artists grow and thrive, it's tricky. I think people are wanting that kind of pack animal experience. I mean, we are pack animals. It's only very recently we've been encouraged not to be, because we've been isolated with devices and screens in front of us, and our work is very much on our laptops and sometimes at home. We are meant to be together. It's in our DNA. It's how we've come through evolution. We can't survive without each other, and emotion is a human, very unique human thing to have. And I think I'm hoping that, and I would love to hear from the young people here, because I want to ask them the question: why do you put phones in front? Like, why do you do that? I think they will realize, actually, we've been idiots for the last 10 years. We're going to put that away, and we're going to go back into the wild with our pack and start doing things the way they used to do back in the day, because it's a lot more fun. And it's enriching, and it's giving, and the cortisol levels drop, and everyone's in a happier place.
Right. Ben, you talked a little bit about fans having an interactive experience. Do you, I know we don't have that right now. What's your vibe on that? Do you think that's 5 years out, 10 years out? What can you give us exact numbers right now?
We tried it.
There you go.
We did, yeah.
It's been done.
I think it was 2017 to the exact point of everybody gets into a concert and they put their mobile phone up. So it was a U2 concert, and they are a brilliant people to work with because they let you experiment, technically. And we effectively created an app where the first song of the show, the screen became markers, AR markers. And if you held your screen up to them, Bono, who was standing on the stage at this point, was this small. And if you put your phone up, sort of a ghostly figure of him appeared huge out of the screen, and it sung along with the real Bono in the arena, and it kind of worked, but it took a lot of investment, and I think it still did take away from that. I don't think you'll ever beat being in a room and standing next to somebody dancing and getting sweaty and having the best time of your life. And we looked at it a bit from a kind of a tech perspective when COVID hit, because we all went, are we going to be able to do this again? And what we kept coming back to is people standing together in a room, having a great time.
You guys touched a little bit on the budget, money. I'm not going to ask for exact numbers, of course, but there is spectacle that has to be created on budgets. And that's a big challenge. So how do you approach a big creative vision from a client who would be the musician and implement that under the constraints of money and time?
That's probably a question for ILM. I don't know if I can. I mean, AI has come. I mean, obviously, technology gets cheaper, faster, quicker, more accessible with every minute that we breathe. I mean, it's what's great last week is going to be even better in 2 weeks' time. It's moving so fast. So, but again, I would just reiterate: just because technology is out, that doesn't mean it's improving anything when it comes to music and live entertainment. I actually much prefer just the simplicity of that giving and receiving. I don't need a million AI people running around me. I don't know what it's not improving anything necessarily. Yeah.
I was going to say, I say that, I don't let people at the start of a project talk about the tech, and I don't let them talk about the money. It goes back to creative, and you can have creative ideas, and then you go, okay, how much is this all going to cost? It's going to cost too much. Okay, well, let's look at how we can achieve these creative ideas by spending less money, because there's always a way. Yeah. There's always a way to do, something.
And I think for ideas for anything, you want to start big as the idea, right? Because making an idea incrementally bigger never ends up making it the better idea, right? It's easier to, it's like taking a piece of stone and sculpting it down, right?
Correct, yeah.
Just to say, and it's a familiar thing in the film industry as well as TV and all the other imagery that we make, it's actually quite easy to get close to something that feels okay, and that you can get sort of 80, 90% of the way there in the first 10% of your work. That final 10% can take 90% of the time. But that creates the final conclusive and absolutely believable thing. And if you shortchange the process, you're going to shortchange the audience, and they're going to tell it. They're going to tell. They're going to smell it. They're going to feel it. They're going to see it. And that's something that we always want to be really guarded about, is to not go solo. You've got to put in all of that detail, and that takes time. We're definitely getting faster at doing things, and we're talking about doing things in real time. That's all great. Funnily enough, if you do something real time every night of the week, you've got to pay people to be there, being the real time thing every time of the week. So you're adding money into a process in a different way. And I mean, one of the amazing things about that certainly the Voyage concert is there's a 10, 11-piece band there? 10-piece band every night. They add that visceral piece. They're playing to a click track. They've got the original stems that were awesome that I was sent, and I was very lucky to listen to. So the voices are from the 70s, but there is a modern band playing there, and you can feel it and you can hear it, and those imperfections that happen are really key. And the other thing that we've realized is, or certainly I've realized, we're simulating things like hairdos, costumes, how the face moves and all of that. On a film, you do that for maybe 5 seconds, and then you have a cut and you have an edit. When you're doing a concert, you don't cut. It's not like you suddenly, Bono stops moving and you jump to another camera angle. That happens on the big screens, but the bit that's real, you have to actually maintain for minutes on end, and it's up to 20, 30,000 frames as opposed to 120 frames. For us, that's a massive challenge. And you also can't have a bad hair day. You can't have a simulation where I mean, keeping the lady's hair in the right spot was intensely hard, and you can't have costume malfunctions. So the process of cheaper, better, faster, it's going to happen, and we'll take the opportunities as it happens. But I think there's always an element of craft here and artistry.
Right, and also you don't forget the core is better, right? It's not the cheaper and the faster, it's the better, right? I want to give our audience an opportunity to ask questions, so if folks want to line up for the mic, it's right there. And while we have people doing that, I'm going to ask you a question about space. Not the final frontier, the utilization of space. Like for ABBA Voyage, they created their own venue. Ben misquoted how many people were in the arena earlier, so I'll let Svana say how did you guys go about designing that space?
So we needed our own space. There's no point putting on the concert for the future in a building with vast, because the two don't go together. And for Ben said we needed to marry a digital world where ABBA's standing on a digital stage with a physical space and make those boundaries disappear. So we needed it's just geometry. It's just math. You need those sight lines to hit and match, and the light particles and the smoke and the haze, and everything's got to come together as one space. And we needed a 3,000 capacity space, 1,350 people on the floor and 1,650 sitting down, or standing if they want to. And it was necessary, and it's a pain in the ass. Anyone's ever built anything in their lives or done a kitchen extension or anything knows that it's an absolute nightmare. And I would much rather do my job and not build anything, because I'm not a builder and I don't like it. But we had to do it, and that's probably why there's not 10 other ABBA arenas around the world, because it's a nightmare.
Well, you're making it sound like it's fun to build.
I know. I'm not going to lie to you people, because you're going to see right through. I'm not going to sit here and go, yeah, building is great. But it was fun though, because we get to make it the way we wanted it to be, and we get that audience experience to be exactly how we want it to be, and enough toilets so people don't have to queue and all that stuff. Yeah. So it was really nice as well.
Yeah. You want to go ahead and ask your question?
Trick. Hey. So I guess I was thinking about, so obviously a lot of this tech is like bleeding edge, sort of top of the line prototype stuff getting deployed and produced, like, but I'm thinking about like, so moving lights, right? Like the Verilight VL1 was developed for Pink Floyd, who were at the top of the game. They were the equivalent of that for the era. And now I can go to Rock and Roll Rentals down the street and get a light for $7 for the weekend to throw a house party or something. So I'm wondering, with all this tech, eventually, what are the bottlenecks for this sort of thing trickling down to smaller productions where it's not an arena stage? Like obviously that's a, we're predicting the future, but like obviously, compute, labor, you need creatives, you need a team, you need all the logistics around this stuff. But I'm curious, like, what do you see in the future for this translating to smaller productions? So like a small band could tour with something that would be some sort of equivalent. But yeah, I was just curious about that.
To just touch on your very last note, it's about you're talking about a band going on the road and putting some awesome visuals into their gig.
Yeah, or yes.
Yeah, okay. I mean, I think it's already happening, and the honest truth is, you can do a hell of a lot on your phone. I mean, let's be honest. You can do a heck of a lot on your laptop, and I will say on some of the big tours, the imagery that's made is sometimes made almost nightly in the back of a trailer on a laptop, and it's splashed up in front of 100,000 people. I think the key to it is the technology is getting cheaper, it's getting easier to understand. I mean, for a long time, you have to sort of be a half scientist, half artist to know what's going on. I think, to your point about lighting and how all of that works, the technologies are getting more accessible. I think, but the key is, what's the vision? Because it's quite easy to make animated wallpaper, screensavers, and just whack them up. But how does that help the performance? It can look cool, but actually, have you put enough story in there? Have you put enough relevance in there? And so I think the opportunities are absolutely there for smaller venues and smaller productions to do incredible things. In fact, I was out at a gig last night, and it was just perfect. It was only a few hundred people, a small screen in the background, well-curated video footage and film stock from this guy's past. He's a national legend, I was told. But it was just wonderful. So I think it is getting democratized, and the teams that we use are big, but the problems that we're solving currently are big. And those teams will scale as the efficiencies build up. I don't know if that answers your
Thanks so
question.
much.
I want to pick on something you said there. It's ultimately about your creative, right?
Yeah.
Regardless of the tools, regardless of what you get access to, it's about the creative that you're putting out there, right?
100%. And I think we, as a company, Treatment, always make a point of we're very privileged to work with some of the largest touring artists of our time, but we also make sure that we work with emerging artists. And so often, that's where it's most exciting. It's because there's this gem and there's an energy and there's the creativity and there's the want, and you can still do amazing shows on very low budgets. We were talking the other day and, remembering a show where we literally got a tent and 10 poles and stuck it up on stage and shone a projector on it, and it was amazing. So, yeah.
And another thing, and I'll just sort of put it out there to all the young performers and producers who are out there, what we're also doing, and we're having some contact with, is forward-thinking young artists, thinking about themselves, thinking about their careers. What we're finding is, for a lot of the sort of classic older brands, they're at the twilight years of their performance. They want to be able to continue their legacy. What I'm really interested in are younger acts who are sitting there saying, I'm 25, 28 years old. I've just hit it big time. Can I capture who I am today? Can I create a time capsule of that moment, that tour I did? I don't know when I'm going to use it, but I just want that store. It's a digital snapshot. I'd say snapshot. It's an animated shot of them performing at the age of 25. And I think a really forward-thinking artist would be potentially doing this every 5 years or every major tour. Because you're going to get to 55 years old, 60 years old, you'll look back and somebody will say, what was it like to go to that gig? The answer is, I can take you there because I was thinking ahead. And so we're trying to also, to your point, engage younger performers to actually lean into the technology and think about how it can be used, not just for the tour that they're doing this year, but for the tour they're doing in 15 years.
Also to your own stuff.
Yeah, it's
right?
yours.
It's
Yeah.
yours, yeah.
Yeah.
You want to go ahead and ask your question?
Yes. Hi, Jillian Austin here, experiential storyteller. So my question is, we talk about these things that we carry in our pockets, these tiny screens that are competing with giant screens. Have we thought about, I think, Svana, you said something that was really interesting, is like, when are people going to put them away? And I was thinking about that, and I think part of that is this where people's communities exist and tapping into those communities. And as generations have gotten younger, their communities are generated here. So my question then is, how or have you thought about the connective tissue between these immersive experiential live performances as well as like people at home and digital, like connecting these two things, not necessarily the phone in the room, but being able to, I guess, have a digital artifact or a digital breadcrumb or takeaway that people can bring with them to share with their communities?
Well, yeah, I mean, words. You know, you can describe the feeling of being in a concert or a space or a play or whatever beautifully. It takes a lot more effort and it takes a lot more thought, and you can definitely convey and connect with your community if you want to tell them, I did this thing tonight. I can't show you 10 videos of it, but I can tell you about it. I can tell you how it felt. I can tell you if you should go or not. I can tell you, you know, my memories of it or whatever. And I'm not saying you're not allowed to take pictures of stuff and whatever. I'm talking about the extreme where you don't put that down, you know, and you're missing out on just this because I'm doing that. I know what you're saying, though, and I know I sound like a really old, sort of naggy person saying that. But I just think that there are moments where it doesn't need to be there, and I, of course I understand that, you know, the social life is very connected to you know, groups online and stuff. I get it. I mean, I could do it myself, but it's pictures of my dogs rather than. you know.
I guess let me be more clear. I guess less about the phone being out, because I 100% agree with you. Like, I love experiences without my phone. I think what I'm saying is, you know, people being able to take that concert experience and moving into a digital format. So like talking through Discord or connecting online with their communities. So have you guys thought about that? I see, you know, that person at home in the live experience, there's a connective tissue between that of like games or any sort of other digital like artifacts that you can take from a show. Do you understand?
Yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead, Bill.
I think there are, and to be commercial about it, it's how do you monetize it, but also how do you spread that culture and that feeling of what the concert was about. There are many ways of doing it, and we're looking at ways of not just videoing a concert, but capturing a concert and being able to restage that. Whether it's in a device as a group of people seeing that concert in a smaller context, or whether it's an individual seeing it on their own. So I think all of those processes are underway. I actually think it needs people who, like yourself, to come forward and say, have you ever thought about doing this? Because we have all of our ideas, but there's nothing better than somebody challenging you and saying, I've got this mad idea. Have you got any idea how to do it? And I think that's where the connections will come. And whether it's an artist, whether it's a producer, whether it's a visual artist, just kind of saying, I've seen that enormous spectacle over there, but I want to try and relate it to me and my community of people. Sometimes we're so consumed in the big thing that we don't realize that there's opportunities. And it could be streaming that live. It could be restaging that in a different format. So I think I'd throw it back and say, what are the ideas?
I'd love to talk to you after this about all my bad ideas.
Okay.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. You want to go ahead and ask your question?
Yeah, hi. My name's Libby. I'm from San Antonio, and I wanted to ask, do you guys have any experience with classical, more traditional symphonic or orchestral performances? And kind of how do we take a lot of what you've talked about today and apply it to these live experiences to meet the expectations of audiences today and really bring in younger people and a younger audience, because that's a lot of these organizations, symphonies, philharmonics are really challenged today in terms of how do we progress and how do we move forward and still balance a lot of the traditional elements that come with that community, essentially, and the respect for that performance type and that type of art. I've started doing some marketing and consulting in that space, and I think it's one of the challenges that I've come up against is we recognize that the attention spans are shorter, right? People do want to be on their phones. They want to have these visual elements in the screens that we've kind of come to expect from our live performances now. But how do we balance that with these more kind of traditional art forms?
Have you guys had any experience with the
It's
symphonic
a small
side?
amount, and it's a really interesting question because I think there's so much potential there. I've worked on a few shows that are sort of more, kind of come from a more kind of classical orchestral perspective, and they're amazing. And there's so much in that music that you can react to visually. So it's an exciting space to be. I don't know why it's not happening more, to be completely honest. Money, maybe.
Yeah.
Sadly.
I think money, but we've had a few inquiries recently, and there is the sort of classics, Firebird and all the planets, and it's like, hey, how can we do this? You can go there. I think, and I don't know, but we can make visuals. I mean, we were talking to somebody about the conductor actually conducting in 3D space, and actually every stroke of their baton would be doing something dimensionally in front of people. I don't know whether that would annoy the hell out of people or whether they'd be massively inspired. It's like Mickey Mouse and Fantasia. How do you actually create that? It's wonderful watching that. Mickey is doing exactly the right thing with that music. And I think that as long as you can meld the visuals so that you're not having a culture clash, if that makes sense, because I think that culturally, that music's got to come out of the space it's in to be more popular to a wider audience. And the only way you're going to do that is adopting some of the visuals, the passions, the excitement of what the modern world brings. I have to say, I've watched films with full symphony orchestras there, and when you can feel that bass hitting you, there is just something hugely emotional there, but it's combined with a film. And so I think there's huge potential. I do think money is often an issue. People go, man, we're on an arts budget. We've only got X amount. But I think coming back to the tools getting cheaper, the opportunities getting better, I think you will be able to lean into some of the visuals that you're seeing in the bigger venues.
It's also maybe about bringing some of the classical music into more of the rock and roll and pop music. We've worked with Adele on her shows both in Vegas and Munich, and she has a full string section for a small section of the show. And honestly, it's amazing. Like especially in Munich, there was sort of a big kind of passerelle all around, and the strings rise up during Skyfall, and it's just such an incredible moment. And it wouldn't be the same without them. So maybe it's trying to merge the boundaries between those two spaces and make them all one.
I think it's very much that. It's trying to find a happy medium.
Yeah, there's a company in Germany who's just done Das Rheingold and the Ring Cycle opera. There seems to be more money on opera. I think it's just people pay.
So it's
more money
opera
for
is the solution.
More money in Germany.
No, but just to say it wasn't your normal opera. There were crazy bonkers LED screens, real-time graphics, and everything. It's like, that's not how I remember opera.
I think that's a great example, to be able to show examples of whether it's opera or symphony, orchestral experiences where they have progressed and they are doing things that are a little bit more contemporary, and it's working. I think that's the thing that'll help potentially drive some of the more traditionalists into this space of it's okay to try something new. Like we've suggested projections and things, and the musicians will come back and say, well, it's distracting for us.
Yeah, it is, but we work with very closely, in fact Svana did as well, Wayne McGregor, who's the head of the Royal Ballet in London, and Wayne's a visionary. He sort of transformed the world of ballet, and he's tech-tastic. I mean, he just loves it. He's doing stuff with Google, he's doing AI, he's actually trying to characterize his entire repertoire of his life's performance by scanning and motion capturing it so that you can create new Wayne-inspired performances. But he's got all of that stuff. So it's finding those individuals who are willing to break the barrier of what is seen as a traditional genre and actually throw it out to the modern world. And what Wayne certainly is incredible at doing that.
Yeah. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
And I'm afraid we were right up on time. So thank you very much, everyone. We really appreciate you coming today.
Thank you.
Thank you.